November 21st, 1970. Tay Ninh Province, South Vietnam. The temperature is 28 degrees Celsius, humid and oppressive in the jungle darkness 20 miles from the North Vietnamese border. Captain Richard Dick Meadows lies in elephant grass at the edge of a clearing, watching a compound 200 meters ahead through night vision goggles that turn the darkness into grainy green daylight. The compound is Son Tay Prison, a facility 23 miles west of Hanoi, deep inside North Vietnam. Intelligence reports indicate it holds approximately 61 American prisoners of war. Airmen shot down over North Vietnam, held in conditions that violate every provision of the Geneva Conventions. The prisoners have been tortured, starved, held in solitary confinement for months or years. Some have been imprisoned since 1965, 5 years of hell in concrete cells. Meadows commands a ground assault force of 56 men, Green Berets, Rangers, and Air Force Special Operations personnel, the most highly trained rescue force ever assembled by the United States military. They have trained for this mission for 6 months at a secret facility where they built a full-scale replica of Son Tay Prison and rehearsed the assault over 170 times until every man could execute his role blindfolded. But everything is already going wrong. The helicopter that was supposed to crash land inside the prison compound deliberately crash land as part of the plan, putting assault troops directly into the courtyard where the POWs are held, has landed outside the compound wall, 80 meters off target. The support helicopters that were supposed to land at designated positions are scattered, their pilots disoriented by ground fire and the confusion of the night assault. And the compound ahead, which should be lit by floodlights and patrolled by guards, is dark and silent. Every tactical manual says the same thing. When a precision raid encounters major deviations from the plan in the first 30 seconds, abort. The element of surprise is compromised. The carefully choreographed sequence of actions is disrupted. The probability of mission failure and high casualties increases exponentially. Extract the force, return to base, replan for another attempt. But there is no other attempt. This raid has been authorized at the highest levels of government. President Nixon himself approved it. The intelligence that located the POWs at Son Tay took months to develop and will not remain valid for long. The North Vietnamese move prisoners frequently, and if Son Tay is empty when the rescue force arrives, those 61 Americans will be moved to other facilities, deeper into North Vietnam, where rescue will be impossible. The helicopters, 6 of them, have already announced their presence. The sound of rotor blades is unmistakable. Every North Vietnamese soldier within miles knows that American aircraft are operating near Hanoi. The response, fighters, anti-aircraft artillery, ground forces, will arrive within minutes. The window for this raid is not hours or even 1 hour. It is approximately 30 minutes from the time the first helicopter landed until the force must extract or be trapped inside North Vietnam and destroyed. 30 minutes to assault the compound, locate and free 61 prisoners, move them to the extraction helicopters, and depart before overwhelming North Vietnamese forces arrive. It is impossible with everything going according to plan. With major deviations already evident, it is beyond impossible. But Meadows has something that the tactical manuals do not account for. He has a team trained to a level of proficiency that exceeds normal military standards. He has a plan that includes contingencies for dozens of potential problems. He has explosive charges that can blow through walls in seconds, creating doors where doors do not exist. And he has a technique, a method of breaching and clearing buildings so rapidly that defenders have no time to harm prisoners before being neutralized. The technique is called dynamic entry, a term that in 1970 has not yet entered common military vocabulary, but that will become standard doctrine for hostage rescue and direct action raids for the next 50 years. The principle is simple, but the execution is extraordinarily difficult. You breach all entry points simultaneously using explosives or mechanical breaching tools. You flood the structure with assault force members who move with such speed and violence that defenders are overwhelmed before they can react, and you dominate every room in the structure within seconds rather than minutes. Meadows keys his radio. All elements, this is Blue Boy. We're going in. Execute contingency breach. All doors, all walls, simultaneous. Assault in 30 seconds. Over the next 30 minutes, 56 men will assault Son Tay Prison using techniques that were developed specifically for this raid and that represent the most sophisticated close-quarters battle tactics attempted up to that point in military history. They will blow through walls with precisely placed explosive charges. They will clear buildings at speeds that seem impossible. Entire structures cleared in under 2 minutes. They will move with such coordination that 56 individuals will function as a single organism, each man knowing exactly where every other man is and what he is doing without verbal communication. And they will discover, after all the planning, all the training, all the risk, that the intelligence was wrong. The prison is empty. The POWs were moved months earlier to another facility. The raid, executed with near-perfect tactical precision, will fail in its primary objective because the people they came to rescue are not there. But the raid itself, the techniques developed for it, and the message it sent, that the United States would attempt the impossible to bring home its prisoners, will change military special operations forever and provide hope to POWs throughout North Vietnam, who will learn through their secret communication networks that their country tried to rescue them. How do 56 men assault a fortified prison compound in 30 minutes using explosive breaching and dynamic entry techniques that had never been tested in combat? What were the door-breaching innovations that allowed simultaneous multi-point entry? And why did this raid, despite failing to rescue a single POW, become one of the most important special operations missions in American military history? This is the story of the men who executed the impossible perfectly, only to find that the impossible was not enough. The 30-minute raid that freed 0 prisoners but changed special operations forever, and the techniques that proved sometimes perfect execution of a flawed plan is still failure, but that the courage and skill demonstrated in the attempt can be more important than success. While Dick Meadows was growing up in rural Georgia during the 1940s, learning to hunt and developing the patience and marksmanship that would later define his military career, the world was experiencing the aftermath of World War II and the beginning of Cold War conflicts that would eventually lead to American involvement in Vietnam. After the defeat of Japan in 1945, Vietnam, which had been a French colony before being occupied by Japan during the war, declared independence under Ho Chi Minh. France attempted to reassert colonial control, leading to the First Indochina War, 1946-1954. French defeat at Dien Bien Phu in 1954 led to the Geneva Accords, which temporarily divided Vietnam at the 17th parallel. By the early 1960s, communist insurgents in South Vietnam, supported by North Vietnam, were waging guerrilla war to reunify the country under communist control. The United States, applying the domino theory that communist expansion must be contained, began increasing its military involvement. By 1965, American combat troops were deployed in large numbers, and American aircraft were conducting bombing campaigns against North Vietnam. The air campaign over North Vietnam was extraordinarily dangerous. North Vietnamese air defenses, supplied by the Soviet Union and China, were the most sophisticated in the world. Surface-to-air missiles, anti-aircraft artillery, and MiG fighters created an integrated defense system that shot down hundreds of American aircraft between 1965 and 1973. Downed American pilots who survived ejection faced capture by North Vietnamese forces. By 1970, approximately 450 American servicemen were held as prisoners of war in North Vietnam, most in facilities around Hanoi. The treatment of these POWs was brutal. Torture was systematic, used to extract propaganda statements and military intelligence. Prisoners were held in solitary confinement for months or years. Medical care was essentially non-existent. Malnutrition was deliberate policy. The American military and government were aware of these conditions through intelligence gathered from the few prisoners who had escaped or been released early, and through communication intercepts. But the question of how to help the POWs was difficult. Conventional military operations could not reach the prisons, which were deep inside North Vietnam, hundreds of miles from friendly territory. Bombing was not an option. The risk of killing prisoners was too high. The only possibility was a ground raid, an operation so difficult and so risky that it seemed nearly impossible. In 1970, Air Force Brigadier General Donald Blackburn, Special Assistant for Counterinsurgency and Special Activities, proposed a raid on Son Tay Prison, a facility that intelligence had identified as holding a significant number of American POWs. The proposal made it to the highest levels of the Pentagon and eventually to the White House. President Nixon, who had campaigned on a promise to end the war with honor and who felt personal responsibility for American POWs, authorized the planning and execution of the raid. The mission was assigned to a joint task force led by Air Force Colonel Arthur Bull Simons, a legendary special operations officer who had conducted unconventional warfare operations in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Simons selected his ground force commander carefully, Captain Dick Meadows, a Green Beret who had multiple combat tours in Vietnam and who was known for his tactical brilliance and unflappable calm under pressure. Meadows was 34 years old in 1970, an old man by the standards of special operations where most operators are in their 20s. He had enlisted in the Army in 1951 and earned his commission through Officer Candidate School. He had served in Korea, Germany, and multiple tours in Vietnam. He was a master parachutist, a combat diver, and an expert in small unit tactics. Most importantly, he had the ability to plan complex operations in extraordinary detail and to lead men in combat with quiet confidence that inspired absolute trust. When Simons briefed Meadows on the Sun Tay mission, the challenges were immediately apparent. The target was a prison compound approximately 100 meters by 140 meters, surrounded by walls 7 feet high and 2 feet thick. The compound contained multiple buildings where prisoners were held, guard barracks, and administrative structures. Intelligence estimated 30 to 50 North Vietnamese guards at the facility. The compound was located 23 miles west of Hanoi, deep inside North Vietnam. It was near several North Vietnamese military installations, including an air defense school with anti-aircraft weapons and a military compound with hundreds of soldiers. Any raid would have to be executed with extreme speed. Get in, free the prisoners, and get out before North Vietnamese reinforcements arrived. The tactical challenge was unprecedented in American military history. The raid would require helicopter insertion over 500 miles into enemy territory, flying at low altitude to avoid radar detection, precision navigation at night to find a target with no distinctive landmarks, simultaneous assault on multiple buildings to prevent guards from harming prisoners, rapid clearance of structures while discriminating between prisoners and guards, movement of potentially 60 or more weakened prisoners to extraction helicopters, extraction under potential fire from North Vietnamese forces, all of this accomplished in approximately 30 minutes before overwhelming enemy forces arrived. No American military operation had attempted anything of this complexity. The most comparable operations, the Doolittle raid on Tokyo in 1942, or the Israeli raid on Entebbe in 1976, which had not yet happened, were less complex because they did not require extraction of large numbers of friendly personnel from inside enemy structures. Meadows and Simons developed a plan that was audacious even by special operations standards. They would use 6 helicopters, 5 HH-53 Super Jolly Green Giant helicopters for transport and fire support, and 1 HH-3 Jolly Green Giant for a specialized role. The HH-3, codenamed Banana, would deliberately crash land in the prison courtyard, using its controlled crash as a breaching tool to deliver assault troops directly into the center of the compound. The concept of deliberately crashing a helicopter as part of an assault plan was revolutionary. No military had ever planned a controlled crash as a tactical maneuver, but Meadows and Simons calculated that a crash landing in the courtyard would save critical seconds. Instead of landing outside the compound and breaching walls to enter, assault troops would be inside immediately, with only seconds needed to exit the helicopter and begin the assault. The ground force would be divided into 3 elements. Assault element, 14 men, led by Meadows, would arrive on the crash-landing HH-3, breach the cell block buildings, and free prisoners. Command and security element, 22 men, led by Simons, would arrive on HH-53s, landing outside the compound, secure the perimeter, and provide command and control. Support element, 20 men, would secure the area outside the compound, prevent North Vietnamese reinforcement, and provide fire support. The training began in June 1970 at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, where a full-scale replica of Sun Tay prison was constructed based on intelligence photographs. The training was exhaustive and obsessive. The assault force rehearsed the raid over 170 times over a 5-month period. Each rehearsal was timed to the second. Each man memorized not only his own role, but the roles of everyone else, so that if casualties occurred, remaining men could assume multiple tasks. The breaching techniques were refined through experimentation and practice. The buildings at Sun Tay had thick masonry walls and heavy wooden doors with metal reinforcement. Standard military breaching techniques of the era, using shaped charges or battering rams, were slow, taking 30 seconds to several minutes per door. The raid required breaching multiple doors and walls simultaneously, which required innovation. The solution developed by the assault force was a combination of pre-placed explosive charges with precisely calculated blast effects and mechanical breaching tools used in rapid sequence. The explosive charges were designed to blow doors off their hinges or create man-sized holes in walls without causing excessive fragmentation that could injure prisoners on the other side. The mechanical breaching involved using shotguns loaded with specialized breaching rounds that could destroy door locks and hinges, followed by immediate entry before defenders could react. The concept of dynamic entry, the simultaneous breaching and flooding of a structure with assault force members moving at maximum speed, was refined during this training. The principle was that speed and violence of action would paralyze defenders, preventing them from harming hostages before being neutralized. But executing this principle required extraordinary physical conditioning, muscle memory developed through endless repetition, and trust among team members that borders on telepathic. Each rehearsal was analyzed in detail. Times were recorded for every action. Time from helicopter touchdown to men exiting. Time from breach initiation to entry. Time to clear each room. Time to move prisoners from cells to helicopter. Any action that took longer than planned was practiced repeatedly until it met the required standard. The final plan called for 2 minutes. Helicopter insertion, crash landing, initial breach, 2 to 15 minutes. Clear all buildings, locate and consolidate all prisoners, 15 to 25 minutes. Move prisoners to extraction helicopters, 25 to 30 minutes. Final extraction and departure, 30 minutes total from first helicopter touchdown to last helicopter departure. After 30 minutes, North Vietnamese reinforcements would arrive in overwhelming force, and the raid would fail catastrophically. On November 20th, 1970, after 5 months of intensive training and rehearsal, the assault force deployed from Thailand to their launch point. At 23:18 hours on November 20th, 6 helicopters departed for Son Tay prison. The flight path took them over 500 miles into North Vietnam, flying at low altitude, sometimes less than 100 feet above ground, to avoid radar detection. The helicopters navigated using primitive GPS systems and dead reckoning, following terrain features in darkness. The lead navigator had memorized the route so thoroughly that he could guide the formation through the darkness, using only brief references to maps with red-filtered flashlights. At 02:18 hours on November 21st, the formation reached Son Tay, and immediately the first major problem became apparent. The HH-3 crash landing helicopter, codenamed Banana, touched down outside the compound wall instead of inside the courtyard. The pilot, attempting to execute a controlled crash in near total darkness, had misjudged his position by approximately 80 meters. This deviation meant the assault element, instead of being delivered directly into the center of the compound ready to breach the cell blocks, was now outside the compound and would have to breach the perimeter wall before beginning the planned assault. Precious seconds, perhaps minutes, would be lost. Meadows, riding in Banana, assessed the situation in the seconds after the jarring impact of the crash landing. The helicopter was down and damaged, but not catastrophically. His 14 men were already exiting the aircraft. They were outside the compound instead of inside it. He made his decision instantly. Contingency breach, all walls, execute now. The Son Tay compound walls were approximately 7 feet high and 2 feet thick, constructed of masonry with plaster finish. They were substantial obstacles, but not impenetrable. The assault force had trained for this contingency, breach from outside the wall if necessary, though it added time to the operation. The breaching charges used by the assault force were composition C4 plastic explosive formed into ribbon charges that could be placed against walls or doors. Each charge was approximately 2 pounds of C4, configured in a linear shape that would focus the blast to create a man-sized hole in masonry, or blow a door completely off its frame. The charges had been pre-positioned in canvas bags carried by designated breachers on each fire team. The technique for wall breaching was 1. Approach the wall. 2. Slap the adhesive-backed ribbon charge onto the wall in a rectangular pattern approximately 3 feet by 5 feet 3. Insert the blasting cap and attach the detonation cord. 4. Move to cover and initiate the charge. 5. Enter through the breach immediately while debris is still falling. This sequence, practiced hundreds of times in training, took approximately 20 seconds from approach to breach. Multiple teams executing simultaneously could create several entry points within 30 seconds. Meadows' assault element had 4 breach teams. They executed simultaneously on the compound wall at 4 different points. The synchronization was critical. If one team breached early, it would alert defenders and compromise the surprise for other teams. The teams had trained to count down together. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, execute. At 02:19 hours and 20 seconds, 4 explosive charges detonated simultaneously on the Sun-Tae compound wall. The blasts created 4 man-sized holes. Before the debris had finished falling, assault force members were entering through the breaches, weapons ready, moving toward their assigned objectives. The assault element's primary objective was the cell blocks, 2 buildings where intelligence indicated prisoners were held. Each cell block was a long, narrow structure with cells along one side and a corridor on the other. The cells had heavy wooden doors with slide bolts on the outside secured with padlocks. The plan for clearing the cell blocks was to breach multiple cell doors simultaneously using explosive charges, then flood each cell block with assault force members who would identify and extract prisoners while securing the building against any guards attempting to harm prisoners. The door breaching technique used on the cell doors was different from the wall breaching. The cell doors, being smaller and made of wood rather than masonry, required less explosive. The breachers used date cord, detonating cord, a thin cord filled with PTN explosive, wrapped around door frames to simultaneously destroy the hinges and latch. Date cord has the advantage of being flexible and quick to emplace. Each breacher carried pre-cut lengths of date cord. The technique was 1. Wrap date cord around door hinges and across the latch point. 2. Insert blasting cap at one end. 3. Run detonation cord to a safe distance. 4. Initiate the entire cell block, 8 cells per building. Could be breached simultaneously by connecting all the DT cord charges to a single firing system. Pull one initiator and all 8 doors would blow simultaneously. This is what made the Sun-Tae raid revolutionary. Instead of breaching and clearing one cell at a time, which would take several minutes per cell block, the assault force breached all cells simultaneously and flooded the entire building with assault force members in seconds. Meadows' team reached the first cell block at 02:20 hours, approximately 90 seconds after the wall breaches. 2 breachers worked together, moving along the cell block exterior, wrapping date cord around each cell door frame while other team members provided security. The process took 45 seconds. The date cord was connected to a single initiator. The breacher pulled the initiator and immediately moved away. All 8 cell doors blew simultaneously. The concussion from 8 explosive charges detonating within 2 seconds of each other in a confined building was overwhelming. The walls shook, debris and smoke filled the air, and the sound was deafening even through hearing protection. Before the smoke cleared, assault force members entered the cell block through the blown doors and through windows that had been shattered by the overpressure. Each man had a specific cell to clear. They moved with weapons up, flashlights mounted on rifles, scanning for threats and for prisoners. The cell block was empty. No prisoners, no guards, no one. Meadows received the report over his radio. Cell block 1 clear, negative prisoners. Building is empty. He moved to the second cell block. His team executed the same procedure. Date cord placed on all doors simultaneously. Multiple entry points breached at once. Flood the building with assault force. The second cell block was also empty. At 02:21 hours, 3 minutes into the assault, Meadows knew with sickening certainty that the prisoners were not here. The intelligence was wrong or outdated. The POWs had been moved. Meanwhile, Colonel Simon's command element had encountered their own problem. One of the support helicopters, disoriented in the darkness, had landed at the wrong location, a North Vietnamese military compound approximately 400 meters south of San-Tay Prison, a facility called the Secondary School that housed approximately 100 to 150 North Vietnamese soldiers. The support team, realizing their error immediately upon landing and seeing uniformed North Vietnamese soldiers instead of a prison, adapted to the situation with remarkable speed. They engaged the North Vietnamese forces, killed or wounded approximately 100 enemy soldiers in a brief but intense firefight, then extracted back to their helicopter and relocated to the correct target. This mistake had an unintended benefit. It confused North Vietnamese command about what was happening. Reports of a helicopter assault on the secondary school made North Vietnamese commanders initially think that was the target. delaying their response to the actual raid on Son Tay prison. By 02:2225 hours, 6 minutes into the assault, all buildings at Son Tay had been breached and cleared. The assault force had executed its plan with near-perfect precision. Multiple simultaneous breaches, buildings cleared in under 2 minutes each. Complete domination of the objective, but there were no prisoners to rescue. The compound was occupied by guards, approximately 30 North Vietnamese soldiers, who were either killed, wounded, or fled during the assault, but the cells were empty. The POWs were gone. Meadows reported to Simons, "All buildings clear, 0 prisoners, compound is secure, but objective is negative." Simons made the decision immediately. Extract all elements to extraction helicopters. We're leaving. The extraction was executed as planned, but without the complication of moving 60 weakened prisoners. The assault force moved to the landing zones, boarded the helicopters, and departed. Total time on target, 27 minutes. 3 minutes under the planned maximum. As the helicopters climbed away from Son Tay, Meadows sat in the cargo bay, exhausted and disappointed. They had trained for 6 months. They had executed the raid with extraordinary precision, and they had rescued no one because the intelligence that placed prisoners at Son Tay was wrong. What the assault force did not know at the time was that the prisoners had been moved from Son Tay to other facilities in July 1970, 4 months before the raid. The move was due to flooding that had threatened Son Tay prison, not because the North Vietnamese had detected American planning for a rescue. The intelligence that had identified Son Tay as a POW facility was correct as of early 1970, but was outdated by November. The raid was a tactical success, executed perfectly with no American fatalities and only minor injuries, but a strategic failure because it did not achieve its primary objective of freeing prisoners. What was the real significance of the Son Tay raid? How did an operation that freed 0 prisoners become one of the most important special operations missions in history? The answer lies in understanding that the value of military operations is not always measured in immediate tactical success, and that innovations developed for one mission can have impact far beyond that mission. Post-raid analysis by military special operations experts identified several aspects of the Son Tay raid that had lasting importance. The techniques worked. Despite the intelligence failure, the raid proved that extremely complex special operations deep inside enemy territory were feasible. The simultaneous breaching, the dynamic entry, the rapid clearance of structures, all of these techniques worked exactly as planned. This validated concepts that had been theoretical and established techniques that would become standard for hostage rescue and direct action raids. Training standards. The Son Tay raid established a new standard for special operations training. The concept of training to a task over 100 times until execution is flawless became doctrine. Modern special operations forces trace their training methodology directly to the standards established for Son Tay. Joint operations. The raid was a joint operation involving Army, Air Force, and Navy personnel, all working under a unified command structure. This level of joint cooperation was rare in 1970 but became standard after Son Tay demonstrated its effectiveness. Risk acceptance. The raid demonstrated that the U.S. government was willing to accept significant risk to attempt POW rescue. This had psychological impact on American prisoners throughout North Vietnam, who learned through their secret tap code communication network that a rescue had been attempted. Multiple POWs later reported that knowledge of the raid attempt improved morale significantly. North Vietnamese reaction. After the raid, the North Vietnamese consolidated American POWs from scattered facilities into centralized camps around Hanoi. While this made future rescue attempts more difficult, it actually improved conditions for POWs because the centralized camps were more visible to international observers and because housing all prisoners together allowed them to establish better organization and resistance networks. Special operations expansion. The Son Tay raid led directly to the expansion and formalization of American special operations capabilities. The techniques and lessons learned became the foundation for units like Delta Force, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, created in 1977, and the modernization of SEAL Team 6 and other special mission units. The specific tactical innovations from Son Tay that became standard doctrine include simultaneous multi-point breach. Instead of breaching one entry point and flowing forces through it sequentially, Breach all entry points simultaneously to prevent defenders from concentrating forces. This is now standard practice in hostage rescue and raid operations. Explosive breaching precision. The Sun Tae Assault Force developed techniques for using explosives to breach doors and walls with precision that minimized collateral damage while maximizing shock effect. These techniques were refined and are now taught in military and law enforcement breaching courses worldwide. Speed and violence of action. The concept that speed of execution can be more important than methodical clearing became doctrine. The Sun Tae Assault Force cleared buildings in under 2 minutes that conventional tactics would have taken 10 to 15 minutes to clear. This speed prevented defenders from organizing effective resistance or harming prisoners. Contingency planning. The Sun Tae plan included detailed contingencies for dozens of potential problems. When the crash-landing helicopter missed its target, the force immediately executed a contingency plan without hesitation. This level of contingency planning became standard for special operations. Mission rehearsal. The concept of full mission profile rehearsals, repeated over 100 times, established the training standard for modern special operations. The idea that you train until the mission becomes muscle memory, so that execution under stress is automatic, traces directly to Sun Tae. Richard Meadows continued to serve in Army Special Operations after Sun Tae. He was a founding member of Delta Force when it was created in 1977 and served in numerous classified operations throughout the 1970s and 1980s. He retired as a major, later promoted to colonel posthumously in 1985, and died in 1995 at age 59. In interviews after Sun Tae, Meadows consistently emphasized that the raid was not a failure despite not rescuing prisoners. We proved it could be done. We proved that American prisoners were not forgotten and that we would attempt the impossible to bring them home. That message reached every American POW in North Vietnam, and it gave them hope. That alone made the mission worthwhile. Colonel Bull Simons, the overall ground force commander, was more direct in his assessment. We executed that raid perfectly. Everything we controlled, we did right. The intelligence was wrong, but that wasn't our failure. My men performed magnificently. I would do it again tomorrow if asked. The POWs held in North Vietnam did indeed receive the message. Through their tap code network and through guards who let slip information, American prisoners learned that a raid had been attempted. James Stockdale, a senior POW who would later receive the Medal of Honor, wrote in his memoir, "When we learned about the Sun Tae raid, it changed everything. We knew our country hadn't forgotten us. We knew they were trying. That knowledge sustained us through the remaining years of captivity." Today, at the U.S. Army Special Operations Command headquarters at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, North Carolina, there is a memorial to the Sun Tae raid. The memorial includes a bronze plaque listing the names of all 56 assault force members and the helicopter crews. The inscription reads, "Operation Ivory Coast, Sun Tae Prison Raid, November 21st, 1970. 56 men executed the most daring raid in American military history, assaulting a prison deep inside North Vietnam to rescue American POWs. Though the prisoners had been moved before the raid, the operation demonstrated that Americans held captive would not be forgotten and that their country would risk everything to bring them home. The techniques developed for this mission became the foundation for modern special operations and hostage rescue. They went where no one thought they could go. They did what no one thought they could do. They executed the impossible perfectly. At the Special Operations Training Facility, where Army, Navy, and Air Force Special Operations Forces train in close quarters battle and hostage rescue, the Sun Tae raid is studied as the foundational mission. Every aspect of the raid, the planning, the training, the execution, and even the intelligence failure, is analyzed in detail. The teaching points include: perfect execution is not sufficient if intelligence is flawed. No amount of tactical proficiency can overcome strategic intelligence failure. This lesson emphasizes the importance of intelligence validation and the need for multiple independent sources. Techniques can succeed even when the mission fails. The tactical techniques used at Sun Tae were validated even though the mission did not rescue prisoners. Innovation that works tactically has value beyond a single operation. Symbolic value matters. Military operations have effects beyond their immediate tactical results. The Sun Tae raid's message, that POWs were not forgotten, had strategic psychological impact that exceeded its tactical outcome. Training standards define capability. The extraordinary training that prepared the Sun-Tae force created a capability level that had never existed before in American special operations. That training standard became the model for future SOF units. It is a reminder that military success cannot always be measured in immediate, tangible results. Sometimes success is measured in techniques proven, in standards established, in messages sent, and in hope provided to those who need it most. 56 men, 6 months of training, 170 rehearsals, 500 miles into enemy territory, 30 minutes to execute the impossible, 0 prisoners rescued. But techniques proven that would save hundreds of hostages in future operations. Standards established that would define special operations for the next 50 years. A message sent to every American POW in North Vietnam that they were not forgotten. The impossible prison raid that freed no one but changed everything. The door-breaching techniques, simultaneous multi-point explosive breach, that became standard doctrine. The dynamic entry concept that revolutionized close-quarters battle. Captain Dick Meadows, who led his assault element through perfect execution of an imperfect plan, who breached walls and doors with precision and speed that had never been achieved before, who cleared buildings in minutes that should have taken hours. 56 men who proved that perfect execution of tactics cannot overcome flawed intelligence, but who also proved that the attempt itself, the demonstration of capability and commitment, can be as important as success. One raid that failed in its objective but succeeded in its impact. One mission that rescued 0 prisoners but gave hope to hundreds. One operation that proved sometimes the value of trying the impossible, even when you fail, exceeds the value of not trying at all. The silent door trick, explosive breaching of multiple doors simultaneously using det cord and precision charges that allowed entire buildings to be cleared in seconds instead of minutes. The technique that began at Sun-Tae and that has been used in every major hostage rescue and raid operation since. One prison raid that found empty cells but that found something more important. Proof that Americans held captive were not forgotten, that their country would attempt the impossible to bring them home, and that the warriors who attempted that rescue would execute it with skill and courage that would set the standard for all special operations to follow.